Greetings. You're listening to the Match Mary Mate Show, where we aim to be the #1 relationship education podcast for Black women and couples in the country as I teach you how to get your love lives together. Here I guide you on your dating and relationship journey, empower you to honor yourself and own your truth, teach you how to navigate and negotiate your needs and desires with men. I'm your host, your girl, Joyce Robinson Myers, and welcome to another episode, Lovebugs. This is special episode number 13. If you're new here, our special episodes are full episodes outside of our regular season or our pop-ups catalog that speak to unique, specific, or seasonal topics. So you're listening to our last episode of the year titled 2024 Black Love Wrapped. Join me and my co-host, Kaity, as we enjoy the final day of the year and finish 2024 with a bang. As always, Kaity and I are giving you our opinions, both personal and professional, about over 12 unforgettable moments in Black love culture on dating, relationships, marriage, and family that we've pre-selected for you. So as we wrap 2024, I want to send a final best wishes to our clients who got engaged or married this year. Because new clients on board every year, the pacing sequence ebbs and flows. So last year we had a burst of marriages with clients who have been working with me for over 2 years. So naturally, this year was a reset where newer clients came on and more became exclusive this year than anything else. But we managed to sneak in 1 wedding and 2 engagements, and we're all excited about it just the same. So many blessings and Black love to you. Welcome back, love bugs, and happy New Year's Eve 2024. Kaity and I want to give you a fun and festive show, so we're inviting you along to play with us. Yes, we provide value with our expertise and even through our personalities, but we're also spitballing our ideas in open conversation and our reaction to these stories that I know you all have heard this year. So this is an opportunity to learn more about who we are as people and women too. For each story, we'll judge it either messy or magical. As you listen to our takes on each story, either decide for yourself if it's messy or magical, or see if you can guess the one we will choose before we name it. To keep it a buck, there were a few that had us noodling over if it was indeed messy or magical. So stay tuned to see how we settle the score. This kind of work is important to me because there is instructional content here. And one of my goals with this podcast is to uplift relationship education and put it on the map in the Black community. So I'm earning my PhD studying the science of love and social connection to place myself in the best position to support my community. Studies show, and I believe, that with proper relationship education, we can produce smarter, safer, and happier romantic decisions that improve the quality of our relationships as we match, marry, and mate. Because why, y'all? Black love matters, and we're in much need of some Black family restoration. Enjoy the show. Hey, Kaity.
Hey Joyce, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm actually excited to do this show because it was so much fun last year and we got some pretty good reviews. So I'm ready to jump into Black Love for 2024.
I'm excited to do it with you again, too.
So our first Black Love breakdown for the month of January. We had Halle Bailey and her baby. She announced the birth of baby Halo on January 6th. Now Halo was born before January 6th, but she didn't finally announce his birth until January 6th. So one thing that I think about this story, I'm gonna admit I was a little bit aggravated. I was in the camp of people that felt like the pregnancy, hiding the pregnancy, I don't want to say it was unnecessary, but the secrecy around it, or the denying of it, right? So we're not owed the information. We're not owed to know that she was pregnant, as the public, as fans. That's fine. But the way she kind of gaslit her fans up until making the announcement, they were talking about her nose being spread, and, pregnancy showing all in her face. And she kind of got defensive and was like, if one more person says anything about my nose or this or that, it's like, girl, you're pregnant and it's clear. And you don't just say nothing at all. You don't have to confirm or deny it. Just ignore all the rumors and then pop up one day with your baby. And, she popped up with the baby, but she made a thing of it. And it kind of created, remember we talked about that Streisand effect,
Yes.
right? Joyce was the one who put me on that term. Joyce, you want to break that down at all?
The Streisand effect is a name after Barbara Streisand, and it communicates the not planned consequence when you attempt to like hide or censor, somehow not reveal on purpose. And then that effort just causes people to come into the very knowledge that you were seeking to conceal anyway.
So the way that it gave the Streisand effect was, her attempt to cover it up, and then the attempts to deny it, and then even her sister was kind of in on it, like, y'all leave my sister alone and whatnot. It got people to talking more about the pregnancy, whereas had she said nothing, they wouldn't have talked. So I think she ended up doing the very thing that she was not trying to do by addressing the rumors, when in fact the rumors were actually true. She should have just said nothing at all. I feel like it's almost a slap in the face. I just feel
Got
like
it.
when you have the supportive fans and they're invested in your life, that's part of the territory when it comes to being a celebrity. They're going to want to know what's going on. And while they're not owed that, don't go lying in our faces now. Don't play in the face.
Right, right.
Just say nothing. To me, is more respectful. But it was her choice. I can't fault a mother for not wanting to reveal her pregnancy, because we understand there's all kinds of reasons as to why they might not want to reveal it. Maybe she wants to just, maybe there's a risk to it. Or there were also rumors that as a Disney princess, she couldn't be seen pregnant, which I don't know about that part. Stress levels. I can understand wanting to keep it a secret, but just say nothing. She almost seemed annoyed by the attention. But girl, you famous. Like you're a star. It's gonna happen,
It's
right?
gonna happen. Yep.
It's gonna happen. And then DDG, right? Her son's father, he made some posts, and he's just been talking a lot this year. I think he blogs and all of that. So he made some blogs about his newfound respect for women after one birth his child. And me, as a pseudo feminist, why did it take a woman having to do something for you in order for you to have a newfound respect for women? Like, women have been birthing children since the beginning of time, but that's just me, Joyce. I don't know what you think.
I think of this post from Kinfolk Collective. I think she put it out, or that group put it out a few years ago. And I ended up writing a blog post on it. It was all the rave. I forget which year, maybe 2022, because I'm going to read a little bit of what Kinfolk Collective said. If my son ever got on social media talking about how he started to change and respect women after he had a daughter, and she says, I'm going to disown his A. These men have had mothers who bent over backwards for them, grandmothers who slaved over hot stoves, making them their favorites and kept them for whole summers, sisters who have helped them clean and helped them with their homework and who fought for them at school, girlfriends and wives who supported, loved, and nurtured. And you didn't respect women until a woman pushed out one for you. Now, she's specifically talking about when men make the distinction based on it being a female child. I realized with Holly and her, who is this to her? Her baby daddy? What are
Yes,
they together? Are they partners?
they're no longer together, but yeah. It's her.
Well,
I think they were a couple. They were a couple, boyfriend, I guess, partner.
these two parents, I'll just
hmm
say, I realized they had a son together, but it echoed a similar refrain where I'm like, I don't know that people or I don't men understand the difference, or that women don't understand how men perceive that difference
Mhm.
of respect versus value.
Mhm.
So I wrote a blog post to kind of clean it up a little bit. And I'm going to read just a little piece of what I had to say. Um, Respect is mostly about how you are treated, not necessarily how you are viewed and seen. And then I think value is mainly about being seen as meaningful, understood as unique, heard as necessary, and realized as essential to the extent that a certain level of care and protection is offered, maybe even later secured.
I have to say, I mean, they're a young couple. He's young. And through many lenses, what he was saying was a good thing. It was a beautiful thing. Many fathers express having a newfound love for their wives after, or their partners,
Yes.
whatever, after birthing their babies. But he said respect. And I think it just, the point of this whole show, we talk about Black love and common dynamics and issues within Black love community. And I think it speaks to the mindset that many men have when it comes to valuing women and valuing us versus what we can do for them. It's just a little reflection of that.
Okay, we can give him that.
Mm.
So what are we giving this story? What blessing of ours are we giving this story? Is it magical or messy or something in between?
Well, I'm gonna go with magical because it was the birth of a baby.
I'm gonna go with you on magical too, because it's a baby.
Yeah.
And then I am going to use our January space as we close to give a shout out to one of my clients, Jolene, who got engaged in January 2024. And of course, Katie, we have to say that's pretty magical.
Yes, magical. Congratulations, Jolene.
All right, February 2024. We have a story to cover. And y'all listen, when this story dropped, Katie instantly texted me and was like, oh, this makes the list. She's ready to talk about it. So, Katie, grace us.
All right. So we know that in February, the love of my life, that's what I call him affectionately, the love of my life since college, seen him 3 times in concert.
Listen.
Usher performed at the Super Bowl. And in part of his performance, he brought out Alicia Keys for the My Boo song. So, social media was kind of up in arms, going having their our viral discussions about the hug on stage, where he goes and embraces Alicia from behind, and people thought, oh, this is inappropriate. Usher is splitting up families because remember last year, I believe him and Kiki made our list
Hmm.
for I don't know whatever she was doing in the outfit that she had on at the Usher concert.
Gyrating.
Yeah, gyrating, and Usher is just breaking up families here. So this was evidence of Usher just breaking up another family, saying that he was out of line, being that she is married to Alicia Keys. And my position was that, they're entertaining. That's what entertainers do. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's all in good fun. They were
That's
just,
because that's because that wasn't your man. But I think people wasn't so much. They were upset at Usher, but it was, obviously in defense of Alicia because they were like, I know I wouldn't want that to be my woman being hugged up on by any man, even if it was Usher. And some women were thinking this would be uncomfortable if it was another woman, like if Usher was my man and this was quote
Mhm.
unquote another woman. I
And
also
he
don't
was
think,
hugging on like that.
yeah. And I also don't, I think what kind of played into it is also that people perceive Alicia to be the home wrecker or the husband stealer as well.
That's what it is. That's what it is. But again, my position is the same, and I'm curious what yours would be if I was married to an entertainer, right? No different than like actors or actresses. I actually just watched the movie It Ends With Us with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and they had some super, super steamy scenes.
They
And I was like, I wonder
did.
how her husband, was it Ryan Reynolds, I think,
Hmm.
feels about this. but they're actors. That's what they do. It's entertainment. So there's going to be, an element, sometimes if you're a sex symbol, you put that out there. But as the person that's married, you understand that this is part of what comes with the territory of being with the person that you're with, and you either accept it or not. So for me, I think people who don't understand it, were up in arms about it, but this is normal life for them, in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Remember, I think it was last year. We didn't cover this story. Maybe it was earlier this year, but Simone Biles, people
Hmm.
were just going in because, her husband kind of, what's his name? We
Hmm.
don't know, Mr. Biles. Her husband was kind of
Hmm.
making it seem like,
We did cover that story, no?
did we? Okay.
I thought we did.
I don't remember, but I know he made it seem like he was the known one, that he was the catch, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
He's the
everybody
problem.
had an opinion about it, but I sat back and I was like, well, what is Simone saying? Like if
Hmm.
she's good, I'm good. I can have a
Yeah.
personal opinion where that wouldn't be how it would work in my marriage. So the same thing here. I'm like, well, let's see if Swiss says something.
Hmm.
He didn't.
Right.
So he either had a side conversation with his wife about what that was, or maybe he didn't
Hmm.
and he chalked it up to being, I know you had to perform, I know you had to put on a show, and I
Hmm.
ain't about to let Usher be no thing over here, so we Gucci. But I never
Right.
saw Swiss have a public opinion
Hmm.
where he did not appreciate what she did. So if you good, I'm not gonna kick up the energy. I'm like, this
Hmm.
is fine then.
Yeah. Unlike Kiki's baby's father.
Oh, that's different
He
because
had many, many issues with what was going down.
he was on the internet shaming her.
Oh my goodness, boy. Boy, that was a moment. And our second story for February also involves Usher.
Lord.
So prior to the Super Bowl, Usher married his girlfriend that very weekend, right before the Super Bowl. His girlfriend and now wife, Jen Goicoechea. Uh,
Yeah.
they got married that weekend. And this is Usher's third marriage. And what I like is that Usher hasn't given up on love yet. So this is Usher's third marriage. His first was 2007 to 2009. His second was 2015 to 2018. And now we have Jen here, 2024. And I admire the fact that he hasn't given up on love. And I'm rooting for them. I'm hoping that they last, even though she kind of took my first love.
That's because you a lover girl. You look at three marriages and go, he hasn't given up.
Play me like that.
And I look at three marriages like, run, Forrest, run. But this also makes me think of, I have a monogamy theory here. I wonder if it's true for Usher. I don't know. These are just the things that make me go, when I see certain things. So, in my experience, like anecdotally looking out at friends and peers, but also in my work, like I have found it to be the case. Two things. One, do men practice monogamy? I'm going to be specific and say Black men, not to make Black men be unique in this phenomena, but because that's who I interact with, whether in my own life or in my practice. Do Black men ever practice monogamy? So I can have a client who is telling me all about the guy, all the things. And great, I want them to do that.
Mhm.
But at some point, I will stop and ask if he has previous relationships, just ask him, has he ever gone any stretch of time in his adult life since he started being sexually active without being sexually active? Like, has that ever happened in his life?
Hmm.
And usually they come back and be like, Joyce, why you have me ask that question? Because that man could not say that he had. Like
Hmm.
since he started engaging in sex, there hasn't been a time where he hasn't had sex. Now, some women define that differently. They'll say, "Oh, a year or 6 months, or whatever." And sometimes the guy will push back and be like, "Well, define that." So I
Hmm.
can let that be that, but that's
Hmm.
always interesting. And then when they do have relationships, I find that men tend to think that anything more than 2 years is a long-term relationship. Right.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
okay, fine. So I will have my clients ask a little bit more specific questions like, can you point to a relationship in your relationship history that lasted longer than 3 years and you did not cheat?
Really?
I'm not saying she knows about the cheating. We don't got to litigate the relationship, but just be honest with me, the person that's asking the question. And usually that's not the case. So they're either not cheating in those relationships, but they don't last past 2 or 3 years, or they have and they had. Now, that's
They
not
cheated.
every single guy, but
Mhm.
it happens often enough that I feel compelled to ask women to ask the men that they're dating
Mhm.
before they become exclusive that question. And
Hmm.
I've never seen a client of mine come back after asking that question without a lot more to unpack, because it wasn't as simple as nope, nope. I didn't cheat even in a relationship that was 5 or 6 or 7 years. And even if it is, 6 or 7 years, women get uncomfortable with why were you in a relationship for 7 years and you didn't get, like, it just always ends up being
Mhm.
something. So I have this monogamy theory that says I'm not sure that once men become sexually active, they have ever practiced sexual and
Celibacy.
relational monogamy.
Monogamy. Okay.
And that relationships are ending at that 2 or 3 year mark, because at that period of time, it starts to expose, can you be committed to a woman
Mhm.
without sex being the adventure, the novelty, the
Mhm.
thing to seek out? Because once the relationship gets to about that 3 year mark,
Mhm.
you have to be committed to the person beyond that.
Mhm.
And if that's
Mhm.
not where that is for you, if you don't know how to deprioritize sex, even if just for a spell, to
Mhm.
make other things be of more value or more importance
Mhm.
in the relationship, then you gonna end it. It's just gonna be
Mhm.
a 2 or 3 year relationship. So when I look at these dates, 07 to 09, 15 to 18, I'm just like, Usher,
Mm.
what's going on? Why can't you make it past the
Mhm.
3 year mark, which actually
Mhm.
starts to really speak to your commitment? It's not the fullness of, but we can't even talk about commitment for real, until we get like, I think therapists, not therapists, I think experts like between 3 to 5 years. So I'm just going to be on the other side of that and say at least 3, because people can fake it year one and
Mhm.
year two. People can lie to themselves year one and year two. People can think that they can and don't know that they can't yet in year one and year two. So I'm just curious. I hope, what did you say her name was? Jen. I hope Jen and Usher make it past 2027. And
Hope
if
so
they do,
too.
I'm like, okay. But if they don't, I'm gonna be like, now Usher, I 3 in a row. So we'll see what happens.
Right, what's going on? We will see. Time, only time will tell with that one.
So what do you think about these stories? Messy or magical?
So I'm gonna say the the fans were being messy with the Super Bowl and Alicia Keys, and the engagement is magical to me.
The third engagement is magical. Okay, moving into March. Listen, there can be no story in March, but the Risa Tisa.
Had to, had to make the list. Can only be the only one. It was enough for a whole month by
A
herself.
whole
It was
month.
enough for a whole year by herself with those 50 parts. So Risa Tisa and her why the F did I get married series on TikTok.
No, not why. Who?
Oh, right. Who? Yes, yes, yes. Who the F did I marry? Her 50-part series on TikTok. You know, I remember I didn't make it through all 50. I think I got up to 35 or so before I kind of
Mm-hmm.
gave up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you weren't familiar with the story, you had to be living under a rock. But a woman in Atlanta kind of recounts the story of meeting her ex-husband and just this, who was a pathological liar. The husband was a pathological liar. And he lied to her repeatedly about purchasing houses, his career history, being a former, I don't know if it was a football player or something, I can't quite recall, that his history was a farce. The money in his bank account was a farce. He would tell her that he was buying homes and was doing things and had jobs, and it was all a farce. Nothing about him was true. And so the highs and lows of everything he put her through, she recounted in a very detailed story on TikTok. And I think the lesson, there were many lessons in her story, and I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to focus on the lessons in the story. So I wrote a blog about it, and I think one of the biggest lessons for that was listen to your intuition for women.
Mm-hmm.
Like throughout the series from the early on, she would mention how something just didn't sound right, something just didn't feel right, but she continued to move forward with the relationship. And in some kind of cases, kind of ignored things, didn't ask questions until later on because she didn't want to rock the boat and because she really wanted to be married. And I think that
Right.
speaks to the experience of a lot of women, particularly a lot of women who grew up in the church. And there was such a desire to be married and to be validated through marriage, and also to rid themselves of that loneliness burden. This was something that I blogged about. She pushed forward and ignored her intuition. And that's something that us as women, it is a gift and it's not to be ignored. And Joyce, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I want you to dig into that loneliness burden, but I'll go through. I wrote a blog post about it too. I approached it from a very practical standpoint because most of my content is educational or instructional in nature. And so I'm just looking to teach women, younger women specifically, but it doesn't have to be. Listen, there are ways to approach this thing called love seeking, this thing called dating, or even marriage. And a lot of the ways that we've been taught how to approach it is absent, missing, flawed. And I wanted to use this story as a educational vehicle since I knew the world was listening to it, or at least Americans were listening
Mhm.
to it. And so I'm going to just run through my practical tips. So, number one, men do not move into your home. I think if we just had that as a standard, it would just, and I'm not saying it as a hard, fast rule. There could be a way in which that could happen, but so many other things need to be true on his end for that to be the case. It can't just be, I'm going to move you into my house because I'm the one who has the house and I'm the one who wants to be married, or I want to have the man. So I'm going to let that be the reason I open up my home. That shouldn't be happening. Number two, 2 weeks is not enough to evaluate a man's character or assess his patterns. Now, I know you're going to tell me your grandma, your elderly neighbor, your mama and daddy, they met in 2 weeks and got married. They met in 3 months and got married. And I'm going to say that was before the internet, that was before the digital age where we lost a lot of community. I do
Mhm.
think
And
if
before women's empowerment and women's
before
liberation.
empower
Mhm.
that too, right?
Mhm.
So for all of those reasons, I do think that with community intact, with the digital age not being what it is, all of those things, you could afford the timeline to discern, to determine, to make decisions could have been shorter because you have so much more information in a shorter period of time. You also don't have to be super leery of how it's being manipulated and managed away from the truth or reality. When we're born in community, and we go to the same schools together, we go to the same church together, like all of that's there. I can just ask somebody who knows somebody about who you are. And that can help me feel like, okay, this is a decent guy. And I didn't have to take a year to know that. That could have just taken me a month, etc. Number three, being happy, air quotes, because you've never had a man like that isn't a reason to ignore lessons number one and number two. And
Mhm.
she spoke a lot about, I was just so happy. I was just so happy. I was just so happy to have captured whatever this idea is in her mind that
Idea.
yeah, that she
Mhm.
allowed that to overcompensate in ways that she should have questioned.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Number four, insist on meeting family and friends. I could write a dissertation on lone wolves, but I won't here. Number five, verify financial means before you commit to financial decisions.
Mhm.
Okay. Number six, when lies begin to surface, especially big, fat, obvious ones, confront the liar. And she didn't do that. She kept feeling that and was like,
Right.
"Ugh,"
Because of the fear. Mhm.
right. Number seven, when a man shows you his lack of commitment to you, believe him. There was
Mhm.
so many times where it was so obvious that he's not committed to you. Like I could
Mhm.
tell what he was committed to or what he was trying to attach himself to, but it wasn't her. And I explain all of this on my blog post. If you want to hear more of my insight, I'm just being quick to get through the list. Number eight, never accept a marriage proposal from a man who has not shown you what you need to see or experience in the dating or courting phase. I think that speaks to every aspect, but she really financially, emotionally, and familially came up a lot in her story. Like you're not getting what you don't even know this man's family.
Mhm.
You're not
Mhm.
getting, but to be married is to be essentially linking those lives up, our emotional lives, our financial lives, our
Mhm.
family lives. And she never had a really strong line of sight on what any of that looked like. Um,
Right.
and then number nine, marriage counseling does not save a marriage when at least one party is not committed to being married. You only
Mhm.
waste your time and money. And number 10, for me to close, marriage is not the blessing. Being married to the right person for you is. We can't just get married in name only. And I spoke about approach before I started with that list. That was Risa Teese's approach. Her
Yeah.
approach was marriage in name. And she got that, and it not only
Right.
was it not satisfying, it was damaging and destructive to all that she had, not all, but to enough of what she had built up on her own. And so that's why I'm saying approach to these things, how we think about them and what we're willing to sacrifice, what we're willing to do, all of that matters. And it can't just be marriage in name. You spoke about the church. I do think the church is guilty of, I don't know if they're guilty of it intentionally, but they are definitely guilty of the marriage in name, either only or as a priority approach. And it has very damaging impact for people and largely the women.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanna go back real briefly to number 9. We said, marriage counseling doesn't work if both parties aren't committed to marriage and committing to growing in marriage, and as a person that counsels couples in therapy, I've
Mhm.
absolutely seen that. Now, I've all that's not the same as one might be more committed than the other.
Sure,
Sometimes the level of one is kinda leaning out, but they still want it, they're just not quite sure. Not
sure.
quite the same, but sometimes there is a party that is clearly completely done and they're just
Yep.
going because someone has kind of dragged them there or some kind of last ditch effort and it never works. It never works. I
Never worked.
actually have decided I need to become better at screening for that because it's usually stressful for me as the therapist as well.
Mm.
Right, because you're kinda you're spinning your wheels and the conflict is much higher and it's just it's a lost cause. Both parties have to want it at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of the work that I do with clients, even before we get to being married, though I do see it with my married clients too. So what you're saying is absolutely accurate. Is listen, a lot of how you move will reveal how committed the person is to you, if at all. And
Mhm.
women don't like to take the moves to reveal that because they don't want to deal with the reality of what it is. As long as I
Yeah,
can still tell myself that it's something else or act like it's not what it is, that's a little bit safer. But if I ask this question, if I make this move, if I initiate this conversation, whatever it could be, Joyce, then he's going to say, he's going to do, or it makes it possible. And then what? I'm like, and
right.
then you know,
Then you have to deal with the reality.
and then you
I
have to
just
deal,
blogged about
right?
that personally in my personal blog, my 100 dates
Mhm.
blog. You have to ask those hard questions because one of two things is gonna happen. You're gonna get a positive response from what you want, or you're gonna get more valuable intel that's gonna tell you what you need to do
Yep.
next, and you're no longer in this place of stagnancy and lack of clarity. It might be hard, but it's needed in order to move forward. We have to ask those
Yeah,
questions, right?
of course.
So kind of wrapping up and talking about loneliness, so she expressed that she didn't want to go through quarantine alone. She was afraid of just being lonely. And then
Mm.
as a Christian woman, she was concerned that she might never ever get married. And so this all to me sounded like what we call in my practice the loneliness burden. It's a form of trauma that can go back as far as childhood, where essentially this person has this void that they've been carrying, where they never quite felt connected to their primary attachment figures. They never, maybe the either parent, both parents were disconnected, or they felt commonly misunderstood. Parents were emotionally cut off or closed, emotionally distant or callous, and it led to this deep longing for connection. And then we start to see it play out in our adult lives. But then also, religious conditioning can be another cause for the loneliness burden. So for women, it kind of states that the person needs to be married in order to resolve their sexuality and to be right with
Mm.
God. And so there's this other person. You need this other person in order to be basically good, right? And so
Wow.
the result is this desperately seeking connection in order to either be connected or to be righteous. And it's a heavy, heavy burden. And the funny thing about it is that, not funny, but it's kind of cruel, that there's like a paradoxical twist to it, in that in our effort to be connected or to not be alone lonely, we can actually end up alone because of that. Because what we do is we attach
Mm.
ourselves to people who are not really available, because we didn't want to be alone. We don't didn't want to sit through the discomfort of having to wait for the right person. So we prematurely attach to the wrong person, or to the person that shows familiar patterns, what we're used to. And then we end up alone all over again, right?
Yeah.
Either we're alone in that relationship, or we end up having to leave the relationship, right? So we have to be able to heal that fear of being alone, or that sense of being alone all the time, in order to actually become more connected. And I hope that's what Risa Tita has done. And I wanted to give a couple of signs for people. I blogged about this, some of the signs of what a loneliness burden might look like. So one, a series of situationships in your relationship history, right? So you have attached to people who aren't quite ready to commit to you, and you have a series that's a pattern in your history. Codependency or over reliance on others in your relationship. Engaging in sex in the hopes of establishing connection and love, right? Feelings of depression, loneliness, and unworthiness. Unsatisfying relationship sounds a little bit vague, or emotional or physical neglect or abandonment during childhood. That can be kind of the primary root cause. So those are just a few common indicators that you might have a loneliness burden. And if that is the case, therapy can be helpful.
Yeah, of course. I had a bonus, which was listen to your intuition, but
Mhm.
that was just my bonus. Your blog post about that really zoomed in on the intuition.
Mhm.
And I just think that's a very important piece, because that's usually the first, when a woman wants the thing to work out, she wants it to be well, that's the first thing she's willing to abandon. But when a woman is suspicious about something that is undesirable or
Mm,
harmful, embarrassing in some way, it's the first thing that leads the charge.
mm,
And
That's
so it's,
interesting.
yeah, it is interesting. It's like, no, we have it and it's activated. And then I hear men make fun of the idea of a quote unquote female intuition. And they only have license to make fun of it in the way that they do, because that first part is true. Meaning, when you really want something to be the case, you abandon that part of yourself just trying to get there, trying to get it to exist, or trying to get it to sustain itself.
Right.
And while I'm never on board for men mocking women, particularly in something that we all know, like there's science to prove that this is how women are different from men, and how um, the positive or rewarding impact of us having that ability. So while I'm never on board with that, I understand how that loss can make it easy for them to play in that space,
Mhm.
because your intuition can't be just something that you use to find out if somebody's cheating, or to find out what the girl looked like, or to find
Right,
out
right, right,
if, this,
right.
that, and the other. It has to also be used to help protect your life and ward off things that you
Mhm.
shouldn't be engaging to do, that you shouldn't be engaged in or doing.
Mhm.
And we don't always use our intuition like that, not because it's not strong or present or accurate, but because we're willing to abandon it.
I can't confirm it, but I feel like many aspects when we say, we feel the Holy Spirit prompting us, I think it's no different than intuition.
Mm,
Truly, I think that some of that, not all the time, but some of that is God kind of giving you a prompt, is how He wired us, is how He made us, and
mm,
it's a gift from him that we can choose to listen to or not listen to. And also, as you were talking about women essentially using it almost like to catch men, it can
yeah.
also be used in a good way. In my
Yeah.
blog, in my 100 dates blog, I talk about my intuition telling me that a man was safe,
Yeah.
where I might do something that I might typically not do because I know this guy is safe and I don't have to worry about, is he going to harm me or is he going to try to do this? And I ended up well. So it can serve us in many ways that can actually help us to connect, as well as to be able to protect and push away people who aren't safe. And so it's incredibly important that we learn how to connect with our bodies, learn how to connect with our feelings, and to read ourselves, because that is extremely powerful, especially in a world that tells women that our feelings aren't valuable, and
Right.
that logic is what's important. No, that there's valuable intel in there that can help you navigate life's decisions if you're connected well.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you saying that because that's true. And that's not the part of the intuition that a lot of men see women exercise. Another
Mhm.
reason I'm a fan of your blog, because you explain when it's just raw emotion and that needs to be regulated and processed first and not just acted upon, versus that inner knowing, that intuition. And you've used it to thwart away men, just like you have to bring certain men in or to do certain things at a certain time that wouldn't traditionally be true of you. But because your intuition is saying, lean in, this is the right moment, this is the right guy, this is the right time, whatever you have, and that has served you well just the same. And so, because men don't usually get a picture of that good side that you're talking about, I'm gonna send everybody to your blog after this. Now that I'm thinking about it, when I hear men tease and kind of poke, I'm gonna be like, no, it does work, and it works on
Mhm.
both sides. And here go the blog. But they don't always see that, and so again, that creates space for them to do the. I think maybe like the least of men would tease us in that space, and maybe the
Mhm.
greater of men, they don't tease it, but they use it as a reason to be suspicious. And in
Yes.
that case, I could say rightfully so. So I just want to put a shameless plug in here. March is also Women's History Month. And every March for Women's History Month, a client and I, Vanessa, we always write about a piece of mainstream media or literature in our culture. For 2024, we chose Waiting to Exhale, and we kind of analyze it and unpack it for the real relational, emotional, romantic, sexual happenings and value that's going on, and not just the way that the culture tends to like appreciate the film or appreciate the book, whatever it could be. And in Waiting to Excel, we spoke about women counting their cost, accounting for your time, counting your cost. And I really don't, I would have loved for Risa Tisa to have read our blog post before this
Mhm.
relationship, but it didn't exist
Mhm.
because a lot of her accounting did not include her time and other assets that she's either earned or that she possesses. And all that happened was that she was robbed of it. And so I just think it's very important that women, we not just look at our desires and how much I want this thing, whatever your motivation is, but really think about what is the time investment,
Mhm.
what has been my time investment to get the things that I have, and not just the things that you possess like tangibly, but who you are as a woman.
Mhm.
And to what degree would that have to be sacrificed, lost, renegotiated, gained, etc., by way of engaging with this man? And sometimes the zeros are louder, or
Mhm.
the negatives are
Mhm.
louder than
Mhm.
anything you could gain. And when you take the time to calculate it that way, you can see it and make a better choice going in. So it can be intuitive as well as logical at the
Mhm.
same time. And I think your blog post and my blog post on Risa Tisa, paired with the blog post on Waiting to Exhale, um, is a perfect combination of how a woman can think logically and strategically, but also emotionally and intuitively about her dating and relationships. So yeah,
Right.
what do you think about this story? Messy, magical,
Obviously messy.
messy.
Obviously messy. But what I will say, if anybody could make lemonade out of lemons, it does appear that she really kind of she got some W's out of the story
Heck
as well.
yeah,
Got some wins, from podcast deals to she got her trip to Paris to I saw she was hosting some things for Netflix.
yeah.
I don't know exactly what she's doing right now, but she found a way to turn those lemons into lemonade. So shout
And
out
we
to
love that for you, Risa Tisa. We
we
love that
love
for
it
you
for you.
because you needed to recover from that. And I'm glad. Like, I think she did. She put on her strategic hat when she got done being emotional
Right.
and maybe thirsty. She put on
Hmm.
her strategic hat and was like, this can't all be a wash for me. So
Right.
watch me tell this story and redeem
Wait,
some back. And I'm here for that.
wait. My theme for 2025, you seen the Denzel clip? I'm leaving here with something. So I'm leaving here with something. Even if it's some checks, because I know she got some checks from posting
Yes.
those videos on
TikTok.
TikTok and then doing the
Mm-hmm.
lives after. Risa said she was gonna leave here with something. So good for her.
Good for her.
All right, moving on to April. Okay, so April, one story to cover. This one, I love this one as well. So I won't say one of my favorite couples, but a newer reunited couple, Ashanti and Nelly, announced their pregnancy and engagement. So we know Ashanti was 43 years old, and her and Nelly had dated back in the day, and they reunited. I believe it was last year, and then
Mm-hmm.
in April they announced that she was pregnant, and they were engaged, and she had always wanted to be a mom. So I just thought that uh was wonderful. And then they also announced, we jump ahead a little bit, they announced the second baby in November 27th. So it's been a whirlwind of a year for Nelly and Ashanti, and I love it for her. I love it for them,
You
especially
love
for
it
her.
for them. So you
Especially
believe
for
in
her.
spinning the block?
Say what?
You believe in spinning the block?
So I think in many cases, it's there was a reason, but I
Mm,
think sometimes after years of being separated, people can grow and they can mature, and sometimes things are a matter of time. If you just left a man last year and you split in the block again, I don't know how much growth could happen then, but there was quite a few years between Nelly and
yeah.
Ashanti 1.0 and 2.0, and I think it can happen. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it can happen. My inclination isn't to go to something that I've already decided was not for me,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that I don't leave space. There are a few things in life where I'm like, this is a hard line rule. I don't want to hear it. But
Mhm.
most things, even if I have a line in the sand, I leave a little space for things to change, be updated, for me to be wrong, surprised.
Mhm. Right.
Um, because that's
Right.
just life. You don't want to be so rigid, so fixed.
Exactly.
You can't grow from that either. So
Right.
if they like it, I love it. I don't raise my hand to spin the block for real. But with the small space that I have reserved to be new, different, what have you,
Mhm.
I I could see a reality where I could tap into that space to see something more. I'll put it like that.
I mean, and there is the Bible verse. What does it say? That even the dog doesn't return to its own vomit.
Oh, right.
The Bible. It's never worked out for me to spin the
See?
block. It's never worked out for me. But I mean, listen, they seem happy. They seem happy, and we don't know the reason why in the beginning.
Right. That's
Like
right.
who knows if it was she could have been pursuing her career. Like we don't know.
Right.
You know. All I know is they seem happy now, and I'm happy to see a woman get what she wants in the end. She always wanted to be a mother, and now she's becoming a mother before her time is up. So I
Yeah, I
think
love that. And I love to see a black man, celebrity, in the public eye with a little
mhm.
coin, choose a black.
Yeah. Yeah. A
So
clearly Black
amazing.
woman.
Clearly, there's no racial ambiguity going on
Right.
here.
Right.
Was that a little ding at Usher again? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no, because Usher's first wife was clearly
Was
Black.
black. That's true.
And he dated Chili. I guess, yeah, clearly Black.
But his today wife
Is
is
not clearly Black. She's
oh, okay.
ambiguous. She's ethnically ambiguous. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
But the first
magical.
wife, magical, absolutely
Magical indeed. And
magical.
then we go to May.
Mhm.
And I just really wanted to use at least 1 month, and it just made sense for it to be May on our list for 2024, where we showcase some Black couples, some popular couples in our community, and just love on them for their Black love. So we are going to start with the most amount of years to the least amount of years for Black couples who are celebrating an anniversary in May. So shout out to Nicole Ari Parker and Boris Kojo, who celebrated 19 years
Hey,
in May 2024. Isn't that something?
that's awesome. And one thing about them, you never hear any drama about
No
them. That's what I
drama.
love. Just we don't have to hear the good or the bad, but we never hear any drama about Nicole and Boris. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, and when they do, they speak more on their parenting than they do their marriage. But
Mm,
even when they speak on their parenting, you can hear how tight their marriage must be. And I just
mm.
love, like, y'all not saying it to us, and you shouldn't, but I just love that I can hear it shine through. So shout out to them too. It's one thing to be a couple, it's another thing to be really good parents. And for what we can tell, I see both. Our second couple is going to be Kelly Rowland and Tim Spoon. They celebrated, as of May 2024, 10 years together, a whole decade, Kaity.
Wow, wow,
Do
that's
you
awesome.
counsel women, couples who've been married that long? Like when you think about your practice this year, has they made it to 10?
No, actually, no, hadn't made it
Yeah.
there. No.
Yeah, 10 is big. 10 is
Hmm.
big. I made it there once upon a time, a long, 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 long time ago. And then our third is going to be a Match Mary Mate client. So shout out to Vivienne, who got married in May 2024.
Wait, hang on one second.
Mhm.
His name is Tim Weatherspoon, actually. I don't know
Oh,
if you
because when
want
I saw Spoon at the end of yours, I was like, is
to.
that true? Okay, let's go back.
Weatherspoon, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, Chris, we're just gonna do that whole thing again. And our second couple is going to be Kelly Rowland and Tim Weatherspoon, who, as of May 2024, celebrated 10 years, a whole decade together.
I didn't realize that Kelly had been married that long.
Yeah, I know.
Oh
Did she
no.
get married? She got married close to Beyonce and Jay-Z, right? Are they kind of in there together? I don't know how long they've been
Well,
married.
if hers is 10, Blue Ivy is 12, and Beyonce got married before that.
She
So
got married, what,
so
08?
who? Beyonce?
Beyonce.
Yeah, and Kelly Rowland got married in 2020,
Okay, yeah, that was after.
2024,
Okay,
2014. So yeah, so it's a
okay.
little gap.
Yeah, but still a decade is
Yeah,
no
significant.
small feat.
Yeah.
In the couples that you have seen this year, has someone clocked a decade?
No, no,
Yeah,
they have not.
it's a big deal. All right, shout out to Kelly and Tim. We don't hear any drama from them either. Have you?
No, not at
No,
all.
not at
Not at
all. Okay.
all.
And then our third couple is going to be a match, marry, mate couple. I'm just going to speak about the woman. But
Hmm?
Vivienne got married this year, May 2024, and
Woo-hoo.
congrats to her.
Congratulations, Vivian. And our last couple, we can't leave this one out. We were going through trying to think of who's married in May, going down and can't think of anybody. And then I think Joyce is like, well, I'm married in May. Like, duh. One of my favorite couples, Joyce and Jeremiah, our coach, J and J, they got married 3 years ago in May.
We did.
Celebrated their
Thank you
3-year
for that.
anniversary. May what?
May 21st.
May 21st.
Thank you for
Congratulations to
that.
Joyce and Jeremiah.
I appreciate that. Shout out to Black Love. Oh, it just gives me the girly. So definitely magical, right?
Obviously magical.
All right, and now we go into June, my favorite month of the year, but it always ends up being the month with the craziest stuff in our Black love culture history. And Kaity, I know you have a lot to say about Miss Ebony K, so let's hear it, girl.
Ebony K. Williams, she has made our list for 2024. Now, Ebony K. was on our list for 2023, and I believe she was on there twice with her bus driver men comments, and then getting married. College women should focus on getting married in college more so than they focus on their education. So she made our list twice for that last year. This year, she's making our list because she announced her pregnancy via IVF in the month of June. And then she gave birth in August. So Ebony, has been single for quite some time. I want to say she's about 40. I have to look up her. Should have looked
I
up her
think
age. She's
so.
about 40 years old. And she has stated that marriage is not for her. She'd been married previously, but she's made statements more recently in the public saying marriage is not for her, but she still desired to be a mother. And so she decided to go at that journey of motherhood alone for pregnancy via IVF. So she's choosing single motherhood, and I think that it's an interesting topic to say the least. For me personally, I feel like there is there's an element of it that is heartbreaking or sad to me that this is what it's come to. uh, it's not just for Black women, though. I want to say for Black women, but for women in general in 2024, more women are opting for single motherhood by choice because they desire to be mothers, but they can't seem to connect with suitable partners that they feel like they can go the distance with. So the family unit is being, I'm gonna say it's being broken, but it's being constructed in a way that is off. I think there's value in male presence in a child's life, and it's just unfortunate that I think she wanted marriage and relationship to work, but for whatever reason couldn't make it work, and so she's going on this journey alone. And I mean, good for her for getting what she wants, but it's a complicated and complex subject. What do you think, Joyce?
Yeah, I think so too. In 20 years, all the researchers will be trying to figure out what do the lives look like of the children of the women who chose this option. And so we'll have to figure out what that yielded for us 20 years from now. Kind of like right now, people are like, oh, what do children look like who come from same-sex parenting? Where these phenomenons that we're just able to tap into because the cohort is old enough for us to be able to study, research, and kind of, make sense of. It is complicated because so there's a thing, I am going to speak directly to Black women. I do a lot of research on the desires of Black women as it relates to sex, romance, love, relationships, motherhood, family, that type of thing. And there's something about the woman who has African descent, continental, diaspora, etc., that really values family. And that's not to say that every woman of African descent wants to use her body and womb to have a baby, but largely we are so family oriented. And there was a season of time where the family came in the picture with the guy, even if it wasn't a two-parent household. Like the guy was a part of the process. And if he wasn't, it was his own volition, right? It wasn't a woman necessarily choosing that. He just decided to not be responsible, to not show up, whatever. But it still came with a guy. And so we really couldn't see how pronounced this desire for family and
Mm,
sometimes for being a mother was, because it was
mhm,
always encased with the package that it comes with, the guy, in whatever
mhm,
way the guy showed up or presented himself. But now that's not necessarily the case. And so we see women either willing to have the baby, not being married, maybe like Holly or Kiki. I'm going
mhm.
to be a mom. And so while I did have a relationship with the father, I know who he is and I can give my child access to him
Right.
should the father want that. I'm making the choice to do it and all of the things that come along with it on my own or removed from you. So we're not only seeing that, but now we're seeing women go, well, with the ability to freeze my eggs and have IVF and all of that, I don't even need to have a preliminary relationship with you, regardless of the distance that it goes, just the basic one to get in the bed and make the baby. I don't even have to do that. And when I read a lot about, I read a lot about single moms or the desire to be a mom in the literature when women think about their relationships, it just gets down to, and some participants say it just like this, but even thematically, researchers interpret it like this, and that is Black women tend to value being a mother over being a wife. We could go through all of the reasons why. There is something inherent about being a woman of African descent where that's true. But if we're talking about African American women, so women of African descent who have American citizenship, was born here, those women, they also have other implications of like not trusting that a guy's going to do it. So I'm not going to get myself in the fantasy or the fairy tale of the ideal family if there's not enough men available to do it, or even the men who are available for the sex are not necessarily going to be available for the fatherhood. I will just go into it to go at it alone. And then that way my heart is not broken. I don't have to figure it out, pick up pieces and try to like redeem childhood for this kid, etc. So I think that part of that is coming through with Ebony K. Like, she is a woman of African descent. It is possible that she has a value, or she values being a mother more than she's being a wife. It's not just possible. We actually know it to be true because this is how she's choosing it.
Right.
So I think that I also, there are two things happening for me in this conversation. There is, Lord, what does family look like in this idea? I'm not a person who's aligned with the patriarchy or aligned with the Eurocentric idea. So I think that family can look in a
Many different
variety of ways. I don't think it has to look in the traditional, like normative way that we think of. But aside from that, I do think that children need access to community, and they need access to a father or a father-like figure. And even if it's going to be a father-like figure, that helps with the making of a man, the emotionality and the role modeling and all of that. But you're still going to have to help your child reconcile why there is no access or whatever the diminished experience could be to their own father, even when you put father-like figures in place to account for the things that would be lost if there was no man at all. So we got to figure out, well, what does that look like? We don't even know yet.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
one thing I do know, in being a little bit educated in donor surrogates, when it comes to referring to a child, let's say we have a child who was conceived by donor surrogate, the concept of father doesn't even really apply. Like, the terminology that you're supposed to use when it comes to the child is like not asking, do you think about your father, or referring to father. It's more of like, this was her surrogate. So they kind of take the term father out of the vocabulary, which is very interesting.
yeah, that
Very
is
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
I read the article about Ebony in prep for this show. I read the article, and she always refers to him as donor, and
Yeah. So it's not the child's father.
is not the child's father.
Right.
And the donor who she chose has 6 other children, at least from the time that I read the article or the date of the article. So 3 sisters and 3 brothers. So this would be the 7th child from that man.
Donor. Mm-hmm.
And I know I was trying to humanize it, but you're right. From that donor, from that man, from that male donor.
Mm-hmm.
And um, she called those 3 or those 6 children siblings.
What is it? Siblings?
She called those 6 children siblings, donor siblings.
Mm.
So I thought that was interesting, the terminology that's starting to exist around this phenomenon, almost to I believe in some way it could be powerful because you're giving language to a different style of family, and there does
Right.
need to be space for that. But
Right.
it's also diminishing a very important role in the family. And I don't
Mhm.
know where that impact, we just don't know.
Or not even role relationship. Right? Like a
Yes,
very important relationship, like
yes,
their biological ties and connections are real, right? And so although it's different, the biological aspect is still there. And the desire for biological connection and relationship is usually there. Even when we look at adoption, there's usually still that curiosity about who do I really come from?
yeah.
What I want to understand myself, my habits, my genetics in a way that I can't, just through this legal or this legal relationship. And
I think
so
they provide that information though, yes? They provide like the health and the,
for what, for the donors?
right, the donors provide it to the center, and the
Mhm.
center provides that information to the mother, and the mother can, ration it out to her child.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Right. But
Okay.
I'm saying the curiosity and the desire for that connection is often
Yeah,
there for the
yeah.
person who has been, who the child, it's usually there, that question or that curiosity.
Yeah, what I also think of too, I have two sons,
Mhm.
and one of the greatest, they don't say it like this. I'm going to say it a little different. But one of the greatest things that I can tell they gain, not from me
Mhm.
specifically, it's not coming out of Joyce, but one of the things that they gain because of the time that I've spent with their father, things that I know about him, things that I know about his family, like his character, relationally, things that he went through as a person, things that he went through as a child, those type of things, they benefit greatly that I have access to that information. So
Mm.
when it
Mhm.
comes up, whether their own curiosity, they have a question of mommy, so da 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 da, or it comes up because they're going through something
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
some school assignment or something like ushered in the thought, it there may be there can be certain pounds of flesh, I guess, with I'm not gonna call my father directly to get that,
Mhm.
but they still are like, well, I can just ask this question to my mom, like the likelihood that she knows. So there is, and I do. So they gain by way of a relationship that I chose to have with the man who I had them with
Yeah,
in
yeah.
ways that like I didn't even understand that fully until they got to the age where they could start asking all the questions, being curious, being
Mhm.
independent thinkers, having experiences outside of me that makes them think about themselves in different ways, all
Mhm.
those things. And I'm like, that is such a rich resource to them. What if I had to
Yeah.
say I don't know for all of
Right,
these
right.
things?
Mhm.
Or I don't even know what else I could say other than I don't know, but sometimes it can come off as something negative because you're
Mhm.
upset that you don't have it. And because I don't have that experience, I just get to say, oh, yeah, well, let me tell you about da 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 da. Da." And some of it is how
Right.
I'm perceiving it, but a lot of it is just me regurgitating a story he once told me that I remember.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
that. Then there's also this IVF side. And so, listen, I commend any woman who can go through this.
Mhm.
Like, you got to really want a kid to go through this. And I respect you being able to go through a process to get a baby because sex alone, we already know, does not necessarily make good parents. And I'm not saying that a person who goes through IVF is an automatic good parent because they were willing to endure a process. I'm just saying it takes a lot more intentionality, a lot more decision making, a lot more having your ducks in a row. And I respect when a person has to put all that in place before they bring something as precious and impactful to the world as another child. And then I also read 12 eggs, one viable embryo.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah. The
Like the
likelihood.
odds, right?
Mhm.
Like getting pregnant is a miracle. Childbirth is another miracle. Like it's just miracles on top of miracles on top of miracles, this entire process.
Mhm.
And she chose this at 40. She's 41 now, but when she announced this, she was 40 in June. But she froze these eggs at 34.
Mhm.
And of course, IVF can work for you even after 40. I'm not saying that, but I love the intentionality and the thoughtfulness to it. I have clients, I'm like, if you desire to be a mother and you're past X amount of years old, maybe start talking to a fertility somebody or something. So you're not finding out all new things at the dawn of a relationship or at the beginning of a marriage. Like, just start talking. And, if enough advice leans in the way of you freezing it so you can maintain your option, might not be a bad idea. So I like in the name of female empowerment, and I'm not a feminist, pseudo or otherwise, but maybe a little pseudo, but I do like that she was able to say, so that I can preserve my option, I'm going to do this at 34. And it paid off for her at 40, because one viable, like, you just got one. That's it. Unless you're willing to do it all over again, you're not going to get any more children. I don't think she was looking for a busload. I really think she just wanted to have one. It worked out for her. And so, what are we saying for Ebony's story? Magical, messy, maybe. What if?
This is one we're just torn on this one, because Ebony could just, in my opinion, could just be quite messy. The birth of a baby is magical, but I'm torn on this one. And, it's funny. When I'm dating, I play this game. It's a texting game that sometimes I play early on just to connect, and it's called Either Or. Where you give them a choice between two things, vanilla or chocolate, whatever, and you have to explain the why. But my rule is that you can't say both, you can't say either. You have to pick one. You kind of have to put that pressure on to see where you at. What's your thought process? I do give one pass though, and I feel like for this one I might have to take a pass, because because we said, magical that she's having a baby and that she's getting what she wants. But the way she just goes about things, in my mind, sometimes can be a little messy.
And we're gonna wait and see what the baby look like.
Our own desire for motherhood is so strong that we're not thinking about the implications for the child, and whether or not the child is going to want to be connected to that part of their heritage. That's my thought. Is the child going to want to be connected to that part of themselves?
All righty, well, let's slide right into July with that. Another baby makes the list. Lead us back.
Another baby. All right, July. Ashanti and Nelly are revisiting our list again. So the baby that they announced earlier in the year, they welcomed in July. Kareem Kincaid Haynes was born on July 18th, 2024. Absolutely magical.
Absolutely magical. And for all the millennials out there, this is a relationship we've been rooting for since we were late high school, early college. And so whether you believe in spinning the block or not, it is a little nostalgic and satisfying to see them together and having their first child.
Right.
All right, sliding right into August.
All right. Dr. Cheyenne Bryant reads Cam Newton and Nick Cannon. So funny, I didn't know who Dr. Bryant was before this year.
Any of us did.
But all of a sudden, I think she had been on Basketball Wives, in the past, but I didn't know who she was. I really watched that show. But then all of a sudden, she gets on this podcast circuit and she's reading these men, and I'm glad that somebody was doing it, right? So she went, she's on Cam Newton's podcast. She went on Nick Cannon's podcast, Council Culture, a few times, podcast and show a few times, and she really just told these men what it was, in terms of them creating babies in single parent homes, and messing with multiple women, and all the things that they normalize and kind of justify because of their status, and their status as quote unquote high value men. She kind of debunked all that from a psychological standpoint. And Joyce, you pointed out a couple of quotes. My desire for marriage is lower than my fear of divorce. And
that was
so
Cam Newton.
That was one of Cam Newton's statements. And so then what she said, selfish acts. So these were selfish acts at the expense of your fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a selfish act to go around and to create a bunch of single parent homes. Now, this is funny coming on the heels of Ebony K. Williams,
Right.
because is what he's doing any different than what she was doing?
Perhaps I think we make the assumption, and I think it's a fair one. It's not always correct, so we need to, check in there. But I think
Hmm.
she's making the assumption that the women who Nick and Cam are impregnating
Hmm.
would either desire the fullness of a home,
Right.
but they have been related to in a way or treated to in a way, perceived in a way where that's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, or they thought they were going to get that. They thought
Hmm.
they were going to be that girl, and then that's not what he did. And both of them admitted to, oh, I can put on a charm and make you think I'm who you want to be. So it
Right.
seems like, I don't know if you did that with each woman you had a baby with, but if I'm
Right.
just taking the fact that they confessed to that of their own volition,
Hmm.
that it's probably more in alignment that you put on whatever face you feel like you had to put on to be engaged and related to these women. And I don't know that they necessarily signed up to be who they are to you today. I think they possibly thought they were getting a different guy or going to get a different experience. And so for the guys, it's like, yeah, but you're creating the thing that the woman doesn't want. She's just having to deal with it now in a wiser or a more mature or a more learned way. Like, oh, this is what this is. And I don't know if that's true for every single one of those women. I don't know all of those women like that, but I think for Ebony, that's not how she's walking into singlehood, where it's like this thing just happened to me because I was engaged with the man who couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, didn't, whatever.
Right. But I don't think that's the case for either neither Nick nor Cam Newton's baby's mothers, because let's just say maybe Mariah, and she was a wife.
Yeah.
But the women that came after, baby mama 3, 4, whatever it was, after a while, kind of what you're signing up for.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I think you're making a conscious choice to be with a man who clearly can't be committed and who's clearly okay with the setup of having numerous children by numerous women spread across numerous households. And I think it's a choice that the woman makes and is okay with because of her value. I think, and I was talking to a close friend of mine about this, in listening to Cam Newton's girlfriend Jasmine talk about the relationship. Her value is finances, wealth, financial security, money over respect. Because we've seen numerous times throughout this year how he has just blatantly and clearly and obviously disrespected her in admitting to the fact that she wasn't the only woman that he slept with since they've been together in a relationship, to talking around the fact that he may want marriage, but he doesn't have an intention or plan of marrying her. Um, just
So
numerous
she
things.
had investment babies.
Well, what she said is, you know, some of y'all baby fathers is broke, and so what that implies to me is that at least mine has money.
Yeah.
And that's what's important, because clearly respect, if I'm looking at it, respect and honor is not important to her, but the fact that he has money, it justifies the fact that he can do all these things and she's baby
She's
mama
still
number one.
valuing motherhood over wifehood because she didn't say your man is broke, like your baby daddy is broke. So she's
Okay.
speaking to the way that she's relating to him, right? And so
Mhm.
I think maybe the motivation could be a little bit different than Ebony, since that was your question, but the impact isn't, right?
Right, the impact. Right.
The impact isn't, right. Like she went to a donor and got someone, you were able to say this guy
Hmm.
because he had the money. But Ebony did the same thing. She spoke at length in that article about all of the qualities that she was looking for and made sure she had this and this and this and that, right? So she was picking based on
Yeah.
caliber and genetics and
Hmm.
all of those things as well.
Hmm.
So the motivation might be different, but I think it's still pointing to the same thing. Black women
Right.
value being a mother over being a wife. And I
Mm.
think it sounds like, I don't know Jasmine, I have never heard her speak. I don't get into that type of thing. I don't know who these women are outside of Mariah that has mothered Nick's or Cam's
Mhm.
children. But it sounds like her means to do that was, I need to secure the bag. I'm gonna do it with this baby. He's gonna have more incentive to keep pouring into me financially if I have his baby. He's not gonna do that with just somebody he's smashing or he's
Mhm.
done smashing. So I think she made her decision based upon that, and it worked out for how she wanted to do it. I mean, I don't know
Right.
how healthy it is for those children or what those
Right.
implications are on his and her relationship, but for the
I
financial,
personally, we don't know, but I don't know that it's worked out for her either. I think, and this is
yeah,
part of what Dr. Cheyenne talks about is, you know, women, the women, both the women and the men being unhealthy. I think she might have used the term broken.
yeah,
But if you truly love yourself and you're connected to yourself, how can you, um, how can you bypass or overlook someone publicly, disrespecting you, publicly
yeah,
kind of bragging about how they molded you and they, that they know you wouldn't leave them no matter what they do. There has to be a toll that's being taken. That there a toll has to be there has to be a toll that takes in some kind of a way. She might not
of
speak about
course,
it or
of
even
course.
be really aware of it. But I think that I don't know that it's actually working out. On the
Yeah, that's the
surface,
part that I was
maybe.
saying. People are not vocal
Yeah.
about that part. We only can see the part that they were willing to sacrifice to get the thing that they say out loud that they want. She
Hmm.
wants the financial security. I
Right.
mean, it's not like she doesn't have a point. Many women do what she has done for less.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
so in her mind, it might not be working out for her wholeness, right?
Hmm.
Because you said there is
Right.
some toll, but it is working out for her for the way she made the transaction.
Right. Whatever her bottom line was.
Right. And she tends to value having that security over her self love, over her self development and maturation. And I don't think that that's the right thing to
Right.
do. But if that's what she's valuing more than what
Yeah.
she's getting out of Cam is working for her.
Right, right. Self-love and self-love and maturation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-growth and maturation. Yeah. So messy.
You need to leave.
You ain't even wait for me to ask. Mercy. Okay, so we're sliding into September.
Okay. So Cardi B, she welcomed her third child, a baby girl, with her estranged husband Offset on September 7th, 2024. Now, Cardi was one I feel like Hallie could take a little lesson from because Cardi did not
Mm.
announce this baby. She did not, there was speculation. She was wearing the big clothes and
Yes.
the draped fabric and all of that. And there was speculation of whether she was pregnant, but she never announced the pregnancy. And then September popped up, and here's a baby girl. And yeah, although they were separated at the time. And we know Cardi and Offset have been going through it basically since the
Yeah.
beginning, that they off and on him cheating and then begging her forgiveness and coming back with big displays and in between all of that, the children kept coming. I'm quoting The Color Purple. In between the beating, the children kept coming. But in between the infidelity, the children kept coming. And I think they finally called it quits this year. But that was what was that? I don't know if that was prior to or after the birth of baby girl. So they welcomed a baby girl.
Well, I had a question for you.
Hmm.
I believe I had it for you for Holly and I just forgot about it. But since you made a tie-in with both stories, I think my question was, would you ever give birth to a baby with a man who's not your husband?
If it happened, it happened. It would definitely wouldn't be desired, and I've been conscious and careful to do that. But
Or
if I had a if I, especially at this point in life, if I conceived a child, and I'm not one who believes in terminating pregnancies, and not a judgment on other people, but personally, I
right.
would go ahead and have that baby and figure it out. But it wouldn't be optimal. I want the security of marriage, both for myself and for the child.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so, people's response back to that is anything could happen. That man could die, that man could
mm,
leave you, y'all could get divorced. And then
sure.
whoops, there goes that security. So how
Mhm,
do you as the woman reconcile that with, especially considering the opinions you've shared about Holly and Ebony and
mhm.
Cardi,
Well, sure, anything could happen, right? But I
right?
think marriage adds another layer of security, even if it's just legally, right? Because going into labor and delivery, right? A married woman and a woman whose husband is present is one, I believe, cared for better. And also he can make certain
Mm,
decisions, and you can make more certain decisions about, medical decisions and financial decisions. You can make more decisions than you can for a boyfriend or a baby's father.
okay. I see what you're
So when
saying.
it comes to the financial and the medical aspect of it, but also knowing that you have knowing all the risks and how vulnerable a person can be in marriage, and knowing all that there is to lose, because there's so many people now talking about how there are no benefits to marriage for men and all kind of things like that. Knowing all of that, and you still decided to marry me, you still decided to commit to me in that way, that shows a level of maturity and a level of commitment that a man who's not willing to make that commitment, he just doesn't have, or he's not willing to do. So it's just another layer. Um it's not the ultimate indicator of security, and there
Hmm.
really is nothing like,
Or the only. Right.
there
There
really
really
is
is nothing.
nothing that can guarantee that another person is going to be present. And, even in marriage, truthfully, all marriages come to an end, whether they come to an end through divorce or through death. Nothing is permanent. And that's part of the risk and the vulnerability that we take when we decide to love and to commit to another person. But there are certain things that we can do to mitigate those risks. And
Yes.
that's what I feel like marriage does.
Okay. I like that. And I always have a short story to tell when women ask me, I mostly get this question from men, but sometimes I have younger women. And I tell this short story. I don't want to get into the details, but we all know I am divorced from my son's father.
Mhm,
And there is a certain level of coverage, protection, and legalities that I was able to benefit from, or my sons were largely able to benefit from by
mhm.
way of that
Yeah.
relationship existing in the form of a marriage.
Mhm,
And he has now gone on to have other children. And
mhm.
in particular, there's a mom who, in our conversations, was kind of a little curious, like, how do you get him to show up in this way? And she meant a
Mhm,
few ways, but largely financially. And my answer back to her was, I married him.
mhm, mhm.
And she's struggling with what that looks like for her and how she can get access, just all of the things, because she doesn't have that benefit
Yeah,
to be able to cover her son in the way that she would like him
right.
to be covered. And I understand the coverage that she's talking about is something you only can understand when you push out a kid. You
Mm,
understand it kind of like conceptually and intellectually before, but for real, once you have a kid. And so my heart wept for her a little bit because I don't know that you're going to feel that or get that out of this guy. You may need
mm,
to put your efforts in seeing if you can get a father-like figure.
mm,
You would probably be more, the time would be better spent. And
mhm,
her son is so young, he could be in a position where you don't have to go through half of the things that I had to go through the blend, because
mhm.
it's going to be the only man he knows if you're able to pull that off. And, there's a guy who can commit. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I didn't really understand that until I had to answer her in that way. But once I did, I was like, dang, that's really the only answer. I married
Mhm,
him.
mhm. Yeah, that's real. So there's part of the value right there.
Yeah, of course. And then I just
Uh,
want to close September with saying um, one of my favorite couples, Sterling Brown and Ryan Michelle Bathay, they've been
mhm,
married 20 something odd years. And I've loved them for a long, long time, not since This Is Us, but I'm so happy that
mhm.
Sterling Brown got This Is Us. He was amazing.
Yeah.
But they debuted a podcast this September, and they talk about the real of marriage, family, of what it is to be committed to someone, to blend your life with someone. I mean, sometimes it gets a little uncomfortable. You're like, wait, should we be listening? But they go there. And I love that their relationship is secure enough and free enough and their finances, their work is secure enough and free enough to talk like this and not feel like it's going to have any consequence to them getting work or whatever they have to do socially and professionally in their lives to make it continue to run. I was like very attached to, dang, the freedom that must be here for y'all to do this, because I feel very secure and comfortable in my marriage. And I don't know that I would admit that out loud, but I still need people to hire me, So like, and maybe that's why. But I just wanted to shout them out to say not only is it a Black couple who's celebrating 20 something years, they have 2 sons together, they are amazing, but this podcast is the thing to listen to if you're like, I need the real on marriage, I need to understand how to think about this. They, bars none, give it, and I just wanted to shout them out for giving us that gem.
Shout out to them. We don't always agree. That's the name of the podcast.
We don't always agree, exactly. And I think that's magical.
Magical.
Okay, October, we have one story to cover. And
so October
right
goes back to January. On October 3rd, 2024, DDG announced that he and Halle Bailey had split after almost 3 years of dating, but would continue to be best friends and raise their son Halo together. So they had the baby, announced the baby's birth in January. In October, they announced that there was a split. And I think that, so that's what, 10 months apart, kind of shows the toll that parenthood can also take on a couple as well. Like, obviously we don't know all the reasons and whatnot, but they're young parents, and unfortunately it didn't work out for them. So
yeah, that is certain. So we talked about Kiki last year. We're talking about Holly now in this way. We would usually shun away from these young women, and I don't think Kiki was that young. She wasn't like 23, right? She was pushing 30, I believe. But we would usually shun away from telling like women in our community, young Black women, don't be up here having all of these men's babies for a lot of reasons, but a huge part is you're just going to indebt yourself. It's going to be harder for you to achieve, arrive, and do all of these things with babies on your back. But these women are already women who are rich and successful. So do you see it differently? Because if Holly wasn't Holly, if she was just Keisha from the hood, we would look at a 23-year-old having a baby with somebody she's not with, or the fact that the relationship is ending as like, girl.
Right.
But do you feel that way with Holly? Because is it not the same because she has her money? I think we also mentioned this with Rihanna last year too. Now Rihanna, that's different money. That's
right,
billionaire
but she's
money.
on billionaire status.
Right.
Not too many men are in that category. But I think the socioeconomic piece does make a difference, right?
Okay.
Like, although for me, it doesn't take away the value of marriage, the fear around, will I be able to take care of myself and take care of this child? It kind of, the financial piece takes away from that, or covers that. So it's different, but the emotional part is what isn't covered, right? The idea of the emotional security and the protection and covering of a husband, no matter how much money you have, that can't, we can't account for that. But the financial piece, I feel like it is a bit of a different ball game that I unfortunately can't understand just yet.
Listen, the blog is going to take off and you will be.
Amen.
Amen to that. So what is this story? Magical, messy, maybe somewhere in between?
It's not messy. It's not. That's another one. I took my pass on the other one, man.
So you said one pass.
I should have saved it. I should have saved. Well, it's not, obviously it's not magical, so I guess it has to be messy that they split.
I
I
think
would have liked
breakups
to
are
see.
messy. Yeah.
Yeah, and breakups are messy. And actually what we're seeing in some of the social media discourse is that people are kind of criticizing him for talking too much and posting too much and things like that. So breakups can turn messy. So we will say that it is messy. So in November, in another conversation with Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, Nick Cannon disclosed that he had been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, which I feel like is very telling and kind of explains a lot of the behavior that we've seen. So people that are narcissists, it's not this is not like a genetic or a biological or biochemical imbalance. This is their personality. This is kind of how they've learned to behave and to relate to people, usually based off of their earlier childhood experiences. And so they develop these behaviors that can often make it difficult for them to have healthy relationships. And one aspect of narcissistic personality disorder that Nick Cannon said that he didn't meet, the one criteria that he didn't meet was a lack of empathy. So he feels that he shows a lack of empathy, but many other of the diagnostic criteria he
And
meets.
rage. He said rage and empathy. He didn't
Okay.
identify. Yeah.
Both rage and empathy. But what I think is good about this story is I think with Nick, we can see that he is trying and he's sitting
Yeah.
and having those difficult conversations. And it's almost difficult to watch him on his council culture couch. He's literally squirming and
Yeah.
interrupting and fidgeting and moving around, trying to justify and explain. But that's some of the painful work of healing, but then also trying to do it on camera in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It's difficult to begin with, but he's sitting with himself and I think taking some accountability for all of these babies and all of these homes. And also I know he had a conversation with Dr. Umar, and he's having to kind of, his feet are being held to the fire about the fact that a majority, if not a majority of all of his children, the mothers are ethnically ambiguous. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that or anything, but
Right.
there is a root in the reason why many people choose their preference, and what that means for his one daughter who is darker skinned. He is having to sit with all of that, and he's willing to do it, and he's also accepted the narcissistic personality
Yep.
disorder diagnosis, which many people would never even go and sit in a therapy office if
Right.
they met all the criteria for that. So I have to give Nick his props for that. It's not an easy thing, and it explains a lot.
Yeah, it does explain a lot. We Black men are not, this isn't the face that you think about when you think about accountability, therapy, doing the work,
Mhm.
and all of that. For whatever reason, it's just not the face that comes up when you think about those things. So for him to have a platform, be a Black man, and engage in the processes, all the processes, it seems, that
Right.
are attached with understanding yourself, maturing in your identity,
Mhm.
being proactive in your self-development. For him to take that on, I think it's ridiculously brave and courageous, because one of the things that Black people are going to do, like, this is just Black people, not even just Black men. I think Black men do it a particular way and Black women do it a particular way, but we are going to roast. We are
Mhm.
going to use your most embarrassing moment, your most painful moment, your most whatever, not proud
Mhm.
moment, as a way to tease you, joke about you, this and the other. I think it's a fine line. There's
Yeah.
a portion of our spirit as a people that does that uh, lovingly, or at least not maliciously, and
Mhm.
then it can go dark.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so if I'm thinking about my brothers, thinking about my sons, thinking about my husband, the things that I know they protect or overcompensate for, because when it is in display in front of their male peers, the way that they can just use that to just, boy, you're gonna be the laughing stock of the group chat if you like make this be known to them.
Mhm.
For him to know that, like, you have to know, Black people, it's called culture. Like, your
Yeah.
show is called culture. You have to know we're going to tune in. You have to know Black men are going to tune in. And you have to have some idea as a Black man what the living room talk could be about you, what the water cooler talk could be about you, what the group chat could be about you, specifically for Black men. And you feel like, I'm going to put myself out there and do this work. I have to slow clap Nick Cannon for doing.
Right.
And I didn't see the full interviews. I did see the full interview of the narcissistic one, but I didn't see the full interviews of the others. But I saw enough of them. I saw large
Mhm.
pieces of them.
Mhm.
And he looked so visibly different, and he sounded different on the couch in
Mm.
November than he did in some of the earlier
Mm.
months in the year. And
Okay.
I'm like, okay, he is doing the work. And like we can visibly see it. I know he still has a long way to go because he has decades of this built up and he's just started
Right.
processing this in 2024. But he is doing the work. And if I contrast it with the impact that I feel like Dr. Brian has had with other people, let's say Cam Newton, I would say it's a little night and day between
Right.
how they landed.
Right, right, absolutely. And I want to just outline some of the criteria for narcissistic
Yes,
personality
please.
disorder, because, and this is a term, narcissist has been just, it's become a social media, pop
Yes,
culture, term, buzzword that's been so loosely used. And I think we need to kind of pull back on that because not everybody is a narcissist. Just because your ex hurt you or you didn't like something he did not make him a narcissist. Just because he did
right,
something that was selfish did not make him a narcissist that needs to go in therapy for his narcissistic
right.
personality disorder. So let's talk about it. Grandiosity, an exaggerated sense of self-importance, including exaggerating achievements and talents, having fantasies of unlimited success, power, and beauty. And there might be two textbook narcissists that I know in my entire life, and that's something that I see. Often believing they were called by God to fulfill a certain purpose to save the people.
Yes,
If it's a Black person, to save Black people and all that, there's a
yes,
calling by God that only they can accomplish. Entitlement, so having an unreasonable sense of entitlement, expecting special treatment and becoming angry when they don't receive that. And some might say that when it comes to Nick, and definitely Cam, entitlement to these women, because I'm a high value man, so of course you're going to give me access, and you're going to let me do whatever I want to do. And how dare you
right,
challenge me on it? How dare you
right.
question me in this podcast where we talk about my behavior? Okay. Exploitative behaviors, taking advantage of others to achieve their own goals, the lack of empathy, being unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings of others, envy. And that's where, well, backtrack, that's where the gaslighting comes in. So
Mm,
because you can't even understand it, you're going to just, gaslight the whole thing. Okay. Envy, being envious of others or believing that others are envious of them. And arrogance, having arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes. Okay. And some other criteria might include the need for excessive admiration, difficulty managing emotions, having trouble handling criticism. So it's all really about a very fragile ego and a very, very fragile sense of
mm,
self. And because the sense of self is so wounded, is so fragile, we have to do all of these extra things in order to make ourselves feel important, make ourselves feel significant. So many narcissists can be successful because they're chasing to find their value and their sense of self in their accomplishments and the admiration of others. So just something to be aware of. But I'm going to say that Nick's having that conversation and doing the work is magical.
yeah, I think so too. He definitely deserves our flowers. And I'm going to close out November giving a shout out to a Match Mary Made couple. Danny and Mr. A are now engaged in
Congratulations.
2024.
Mhm.
And let's go right into December. I think we just have one main story, which centers around the show Later Daters.
Later Daters, produced by our favorite First Lady, Michelle Obama. So
Hmm.
it follows the dating lives of, I guess, seniors over the age of 55. I don't know
Yeah.
what the
Yep.
official senior citizen number is, but people over the age of 55 as they're entering back into the dating world, and kind of watching them being coached and going through all of the highs and lows of that is dating. Now, when
Mhm.
I first heard about this show, I was like, I had no interest in watching it. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know here. Because the idea of dating after a certain age to me is just not something that I want to do. I'm not interested in it. Even if you find love, like I don't want to hear about the love stories and the success stories. Because for me personally, having never been married, I don't want to still be trying at 55, 60 years old. I say,
Okay.
I want to be like a Tracy Ellis Ross that's like 50, she would be more the goal for me, just 50 and fabulous and happy and,
Okay.
just amazing. That's more of the success story, but to still be hoping at 55, 60. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with it, it's just not what I want for myself, because that would feel painful to be hoping for so long. Now, if it happens, obviously I'm not going to be like, no, I said I wasn't going to
Right,
going to
right,
be
right.
dating at this age, but I just don't hope for that. But I think in watching the show too, many of the people, not all, but some were married multiple times, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 and 3 marriages. Some were widows and widowers, and you
Yeah.
can't, this is what we were talking about earlier, and it's never
Yeah.
secure and you never know. And you could have had a wonderful marriage. Some of them I remember 20 years, 25 years plus, and then someone passes away and you find yourself back out there again. And this is life, and this is the reality of relationships. It's inherently vulnerable to love someone, because you will lose that person in some capacity unless
Some
they
way.
die, you die
Mm-hmm.
first, but the relationship will be severed, at some point. And so watching it, I thought it was kind of sweet, and it was also relatable in the sense that, man, some of the foolishness never ends.
Yes, this is accurate. But I also think that's the part they want to televise because they need the dramatics for the show. But yes.
But what are you saying? You don't think that, do you think that, so we're specifically talking about Anise. Anise was beautiful, 62-year-old Black woman in Atlanta, and she went on a few dates. I think she dated about 4 men on the show, and one of the first ones she saw was with a man who asked her if she had gotten any work done, and then said he lived in, I don't know, Buckhead or something, but F's around in Atlanta, and was commenting on her body, and just why are you talking about you F around in a
I
certain place
know.
at 60 something years old? Like,
I
oh, and
know.
that
I
he likes his
know.
women a little ghetto. He's like, I'm sure you got it in you. Pull the ghetto out of there.
Some people don't grow up.
Right.
Like the age is not a determinant
It's a number.
of the maturity. And so I do think that's real. But
Mm-hmm.
I also think that I don't know if a single adult asked all those questions on a date back to back. And maybe he didn't, and they packaged it that way
Mm-hmm.
to give us the drama, is also what I'm saying. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, some foolishness, listen, foolishness don't die. Somebody got it somewhere.
This could be my own bias though, but it bothered me because I didn't see any other group of people. It's the Black woman that's having to deal with that. I didn't see the white women dealing with that type of immaturity and foolishness. I
That's what
didn't
they
see.
chose to showcase. You have to
But
know
what is
some
it
of that
showcase? Because
is,
what was happening? Did it actually happen for anybody else?
or is
I
that
feel
how
like
they
if it had,
cast it? They cast it a certain way to make Black people look a certain way. Or are
yeah,
you saying doesn't have anything to do with that? What you see is an organic phenomenon of just Black people, and I'm a little embarrassed that that was how we were presented on TV.
oh, let's see. Okay, so Michelle Obama is the producer. So I'm hoping that she didn't strategically pick, or it was her production. So, she has ultimate say. I'm hoping that she wouldn't strategically allow something like that to happen. I think had
I don't know
the
why she
other.
would optionally let that happen. Just choose Black men who don't ask those questions.
Well, true, but if it happened, I mean, if it happened, it's good entertainment, makes for good TV. But then at the same time, I think if it had happened for any other group of people, white women,
Yeah,
yeah, white women, white men, whoever, they
right.
would have shown it. They're going to show the drama as it happens, regardless of
I
who
see what you're
who it
saying.
is.
Okay,
But it
okay.
happened for this Black woman, and I just hate it for us.
Yeah, I hate that for us too. I see exactly
Like,
what you're saying now.
they would have shown it regardless. Anything that they can get that's going to get a reaction, a production company is going to show it. But why did it have to be the Black people? Why did it
No,
have to be the Black
no.
people out here showing his behind?
Where the ghetto at?
Oh
Gosh.
my
That
Lord.
makes me think of
What was
the
good was that she did end up finding love for the moment, at least I say, in Anise and Willie. She connected with a man. And I think what drew them together is they just looked so good together. And he was
yeah.
handsome and she sexy and beautiful, and they made it work for her. I'm not gonna spoil it, but she found some love on the show.
Yeah. So let's close. I know Anissa's kind of like goal with finding the blind spots really resonated with you.
Mhm,
I did not finish the season.
mhm,
I got a little into it, and
mhm.
then I just was so
Wasn't for
upset.
you,
I'd be so upset watching this. So I'd be like, I'm just
really?
not interested. Um, but I did give it a shot because I know we needed to talk about it.
Mhm.
And she talked about these blind spots. And so, you know, uh Kaity is a lover girl, but I think your next is a sage, right? And my leading is a sage. So off we went to put on our researcher hats to find out who was this dating coach and what's going
Mhm.
on. And
Yeah.
so we found out, well, we already know her name was Logan. How do we say her last name?
Yuri.
Yuri? Okay, Logan
Mhm.
Yuri. And she has this dating quiz that is designed to help the user figure out where your blind spots are. And so you
Mhm.
take the dating quiz, and it's going to give you 3 results based on how you input your data. You're either going to yield a maximizer, a satisficer, which is a portmanteau on the word satisfy and suffice, or
Mhm.
you're going to be um, a romanticizer or a hesitator. Sorry, not 3, 4, or a
Yeah.
hesitator.
Mhm.
So Kaity and I decided to take the quiz and see how it yielded for us. What are our results? Kaity, you want to
Mhm.
share?
So mine was a maximizer. So a maximizer is essentially the person who wants to see all their options before they make a decision and wants to make the perfect, best, right choice. And I feel like it's a yes and a no.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't need to see all my options. I don't often have a thought of like if I come across someone that I feel like is a good fit, will there be someone better? But I have had trouble coming across someone that I feel like
Hmm.
is a good fit though. Haven't quite gotten to that, hence 100 dates. So I'm on date what 35 or so now. And some close ones and some ones that I have liked and thought, maybe we could make it work, but ultimately didn't feel like it, and this was both ways, didn't feel like both either would work out. So I'm continuing down my list of 100 dates. And
You're getting
I think that might be the ultimate example of maximizing. According to Logan, according
according
to
to
Logan, you
Logan.
can make relationships work with many people. Which I mean, I guess. What do you think, Joyce? You can make a relationship work with many people.
Yeah, I do think that's accurate and probably
Yeah.
why I'm more of the satisficer.
Mhm.
Um, I don't necessarily think all of those people should be like your life partner, but I do think most of the relationship work, the marriage work, is what you make it to be. So
Mhm. Mhm.
there is a made or a making that's a part of the process that when we're dating, we don't tend to value that part of it, but that is most of it. And so in that effort, you can do that work with more than one person. Like
Mm.
you don't need a prince, charming, a knight in shining armor, the only one, type for that to be true and kind of like work out if you're committed to it. I have one of my clients, we were celebrating the next relationship milestone that she made in our cohort. And I asked her to just speak for a little bit, like boost morale in the group, do your thing. And so she kind of narrated on this thing that I think a lot of daters or people in exclusive relationships can miss, particularly women. And she said, I remember the moment that it got hard.
Mhm.
Not hard like this is unbearable, but she meant hard like I am no longer only benefiting from this relationship. It is now time for me to invest, time for me to sacrifice, time for me to get over myself, time for me to experience something uncomfortable. And she was like, and that I use that as a sign to be like, oh, it's time to get out of here. And
Mm.
wasn't perceiving it as like self-sabotage, anything like that, but was thinking that because it is uncomfortable, because it is difficult, because it is not the most desirable, I'm not on cloud nine, that means this isn't the one. And I'm like, well, that's not how that translates. But that's how she had been thinking about it before. And so when we got to that moment, I knew that would be the moment. But when we got to that moment, I pushed her to be like, solve it, fix it, explore it, do what you need to do, and don't use this as a sign to be like, well, this might not be the guy for you, because unless everything is rosy and lovey-dovey and everything just magically clicks together in its place all on its own, that means that this isn't the guy. And like I pushed her to do it. And then there came a point where she had pushed herself to do it, but in her words, got to the end of herself. Like, this is the most that I can do. And then and so I remember saying to her, and are you ready? Because I keep upgrading you in these relationships, 3.0, 4.0, I don't even know where we were. But I was like, congratulations, you have reached relationship level, let's just say 6.0 commitment. Now you're going to have to decide, are you willing to be committed to this relationship, to this man, and to the version that you have to be inside of this relationship, pretty much no matter what, minus, your deal breakers and some obviously reasonable things, but are you willing? And I remember her going, oh, Joyce, this is why I can like get men, but not necessarily. I'm like, this is why a lot of people can get men, but not necessarily keep them. And so she was narrating that over, and she was like, I now know that that's real. That like, because the minute that I decided to commit to that in the way that you pushed me to, things started to align. And it wasn't because everything fell into place and there was already alignment for her to get there. But she may align and settle within herself that, oh, this is really about how you show up for it. How
This is
you,
the work of relationship.
this is right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still getting some of the benefit. He's still paying for a date. He's still
Right.
being your emotional support. He's still
Right.
being the person on your arm at the family gatherings and
Mm-hmm.
being the great sex and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But now, it comes with this, because people are
It's
people.
not
This is a
always
relationship.
about it's not always about being served, which is something that you constantly hear. Does this relationship serve you anymore? It's not always about that.
Right. It's how are you going to give in to this?
Right.
And you
Are
have
you
to be able to
serving?
do it without keeping score, which is
Mm-hmm.
difficult for people to do. Like they are running scorecards, and it tends to come up when
Yeah.
conflict, arises. So I say that to say, I don't think that this guy, her guy, is any magical person for her. I think there was a certain set of alignment, a certain set of core values,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, that was served as a good foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
and beyond that, it's what they are showing up for it and how they're making it work. So I don't think you could do that with every single person you date,
Yeah.
but I do think you could pick out a couple of them and
Mm-hmm.
could have been married or into a long-term relationship, and you would
Mm-hmm.
have figured it out just the same as any one of the other ones that you plucked out of that group.
See, I struggle with that because I feel like
I
that almost
know.
means you can marry just go and pick someone. And I've done that in the past. I mean, no, let me not say that. I didn't just pick someone. But I didn't come in to a relationship with like the standards and boundaries and all of that, right? Like
Yes.
that's all this is what I want or need to create a healthy and fulfilling relationship. Um, I could go that's like saying there doesn't really need to be. I don't know. It sounds like the saying that you don't need to have standards and boundaries or that
No, these men
anyone
are
will
already
meet.
meeting that. If
They're
they're
already
in your
meeting that.
dating pool, right?
Okay.
I'm talking about men who you would, date and get into exclusive relationships with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's usually not a high number. When you can ask a woman who's 35,
Mm-hmm.
40, how
Mm-hmm.
many men have you been in an exclusive, like a for real exclusive
Right.
relationship with?
Right.
That's not a
Right.
lot of people.
Not many. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm saying, and sometimes it's none, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if they can get past that, you have a foundation of values, you have a foundation of like this alignment and
Right.
the things that kind of like need to be true, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that's there, then there are unique things that make a person that nobody else can have, that when they get into a relationship makes that relationship a unique thing, right? Because it's
Yeah.
made up of two unique people.
Mm-hmm.
That won't be able to be duplicated because you're going to experience that differently. It's a whole different human. But
Right.
how you commit to it, how you show up for it, and the work you're willing to do to engage each other to get there, I do think that in most cases that could have been done. Let's say you pull two men out of your history and you're like, this man met these things. And I'm not saying that you have that, but let's just imagine. And it's a Rodney and a Craig. I believe you probably could have got married to either one of them. And like and made that work, because once we get past the dating and the exclusive part where we're like, yes, values, yes, the things that need to be true and all of that, the rest of it after that checks up is, do you commit to it? Do you show up? Do you do the work for it? And that doesn't, after you do that first check, that second part doesn't require uniqueness or specificity. It just requires your own gusto.
Right.
And
I
that
agree with
person,
that.
you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
I agree with that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
it was interesting to see.
It was interesting to see. I'll share mine. Mine was a satisficer, and she basically says, or she describes a satisficer in the way that I just kind of narrated. Not only are satisfiers able to make good decisions, they tend to wind up happier about them. That's because it's not worth repeating. Satisficing is not about settling. They may have very high standards and stop only after those standards have been met. So the difference is, once they stop, they don't worry about what else is out there, which is I think that what's left on the table with this is a nuance that you picked up on, which is there's fit, and then there's determining if there's somebody better. And you're like, it's not the determining better for me. It's just trying to get to the fit. And I don't think that Logan's test or her explanation of the results of those four, or the types, the explanation of the types of those four, rather, I don't think it accounted for the nuance that you're talking about. So maybe there could be some improvement there as she takes in that feedback. But I do know maximizes to think in the way that she described, and your unique experience with the quiz and dating has brought to surface a nuance that I don't think is often captured when we think about maximizers. So that makes me wonder, are you a full maximizer? If I would have had to guess, I would have said a mix between romanticizer and maximizer, because it really is the best complement of your lover stage.
Well, funny thing is, my friend took the quiz after I told her about it, and she got a combination of all three. So you can have a combination. Although I like I like to feel a certain way that comes with the lover girl experience, I don't expect relationships and dating to be overly romantic, like to where, and you've seen me write about it, if chemistry and sparks are not present right away, and if it's not perfect right away, I don't rule it out. Like, I'll kind of stick around. But I do like chemistry.
Of course.
I do like it. It feels
Makes
good,
the sex
but I don't
better.
expect everything to be like a romantic story.
Yeah.
And you know, my friend who also took it, she said, I said, does this feel like me? And she was like, yes and no, because she said, you know, your process is to want to maximize, but then she's like, the people that you've been meeting, and she knows the good and the bad. She's like, I don't know if I would choose any of them for you either. So this is the
that's kind of fair. That's kind of fair, because I mean, satisficer and probably maximizer, I lean there, but not maximizing. And I think that there's something better, but just if I have to make a final decision, and most of the decision to marry, you're basing what you do know to cover the unknown. So I'm not saying you're walking into the abyss of nothingness where you don't know anything. But the marriage has to take course over a stretch of time that you know nothing about. I don't know who we're going to be at 50. I don't know what's going to happen to us at 55, like just all those things. And you're taking what you know to help project, you know, into that. And there's some security there too.
As best you can.
Yeah, right. As best as you can. And then there's commitment. Commitment compensates for a lot of what you don't know, which is why what you do know has to be representative and whole and accurate and fulfilling enough, right? Like there are things that you can't just, this guy, like it doesn't work like that.
Right. Just pick anybody.
But I do think of maximizing in terms of, if I have to make a decision with my known to cover the unknown, it's going to cover as much as I can.
As much as you can.
Do a full circle.
Right. And you also said, when we were talking about this before, you believe in getting what you want. And, you know, if that's maximizing, then sure. But also, I think it falls into her satisfier, description as well.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
All righty. I think we've come to the end of the road, the end of the year, Kaity.
All right, 2024 was a heck of a year.
It's a wrap, but how are we, what is the word? I don't even know the word.
How
Describing.
we
How are we describing our December story? Messy, magical, maybe?
Well, I guess we could say I'd say magical in that it's nice to see, it's magical to see people at any age being open to and
Oh,
pursuing
yeah.
love.
Yeah, I love that. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sitting with me for another wrapped end of the year episode. I enjoyed you.
Thank you for having me. Hope the
Yeah, no
listeners
worries.
enjoy it too.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year 2025.
And Happy New Year 2025 to you too. If you enjoyed today's show and would like to keep this podcast in production, consider making a donation. And again, many thanks to all those who give back to the Match Mary Mate family and keep us going as we aim to put relationship education on the map in the Black community. We are incredibly thankful for your support. If you're interested in my research project, my coaching work, or want me to speak about either at your next event, you can reach me at hello@matchmarymate.com. If you also want to share some topics that you'd like to hear on the show, please use the comments feature on this episode or shoot me an email at podcast@matchmarymate.com. To start 2025, we'll have a special episode dropping on Friday, January 2nd, where I introduce you to my bestie. Thank you for joining me today and tuning into another episode of the Match Mary Mate Show. Until our next time together, love, light, and relationship. Remember, we grow as we go, and I'll be with you in the next episode. Cheers.